Unit 1. Housing Problems. Oral A. Dialogue. A husband and wife are discussing the demolition of some old buildings to make room for the erection of office blocks in an area where there is an acute shortage of housing.
It's an absolute scandal. My friend, Mrs. Stanley, says at least 20 people have already written to the council to complain.
To complain about what?
Haven't you heard? The gas company are thinking of pulling down all those old houses in Salt Lane and selling the land to a property company to build office blocks. And the council are doing absolutely nothing about it.
Well, those old houses are in pretty bad condition.
That's not the point. The point is, it's not fair. There's a housing shortage. There are people who've been living and working in this district for over 20 years and still haven't got a decent place to live. It's a shame.
Well, I suppose the gas company is in business like everyone else. The land those houses are built on is worth a good price.
Worth a good price? What does that matter when there are families like the ones in Salt Lane who haven't even got a bathroom or an inside toilet? It's a disgrace. What we want are new homes in Salt Lane, not office blocks. One of the cashiers who works in the supermarket lives in Salt Lane, and she says she and her husband have been on the housing list since the war. They've been complaining to the council for years, and every time they write, the only reply they get is a printed postcard saying the matter is receiving attention. It's not right.
I don't see what that has to do with the gas company demolishing those old houses in Salt Lane, particularly if they're in the condition you say they are.
Why don't you listen? I've just told you. The gas company have no right to sell that land for office blocks. It's all wrong. The proper thing is for them to put up some high-rise flats and move those families in Salt Lane into them as quickly as possible.
Aren't you getting a bit too worked up about it? I mean, I'm sure the gas company know what they're doing.
Know what they're doing? They don't know their right hand from their left. I tell you, something will have to be done about it. I'm getting up a petition for a start, and everyone I've spoken to so far has promised to sign, and Mrs. Stanley has been asking for volunteers for a protest march. The sooner the gas company and the council realise that people won't put up with this sort of thing, the better. And there's another thing.
Oh, what's that, dear?
I want you to write to the local paper and make a formal complaint on behalf of the residents of Salt Lane.
But we don't live in Salt Lane.
I know we don't, but that cashier in the supermarket does. She says it's terrible. She never knows whether she's lit her cooker properly or not because of the smell from the gasworks.
Before I write, I've got something to tell you.
Oh? Nothing bad, I hope.
No, I don't think so. It's just that my firm are moving offices next year.
Moving? Where to?
To one of the new office blocks in Salt Lane.
Number 1. What sort of condition are the houses in Salt Lane in?
They're in a pretty bad condition.
2. Why does Mrs. Moon consider the gas company's plans are unfair?
Because there's a housing shortage.
3. What are some of the disadvantages of the houses in Salt Lane?
Some of them haven't got a bathroom or inside toilet.
4. How long have the supermarket cashier and her husband been on the housing list?
They've been on the housing list since the war.
5. What is the council's reply to letters of complaint?
They send a printed postcard saying the matter is receiving attention.
6. What is Mrs. Moon doing about the situation?
She's getting up a petition.
7. In what way has Mrs. Stanley been helping?
She's been asking for volunteers for a protest march.
8. Why doesn't Mr. Moon want to write to the local paper?
Because the Moons don't live in Salt Lane.
9. What special problem has the smell from the gasworks caused the supermarket cashier?
She doesn't know if she's lit her cooker properly.
And 10. What does Mr. Moon tell his wife?
That his firm are moving their offices to Salt Lane next year.
Oral B. Making protests. In the dialogue, Mrs. Moon uses the following expressions of protest.
It's an absolute scandal. It's a shame. It's a disgrace. It's not right. It's all wrong. It's not fair.
Now use these expressions to protest about similar situations. For example, the house is damp. The roof leaks. The landlord doesn't care.
It's an absolute scandal. The house is damp because the roof leaks and the landlord doesn't care.
Mrs. Brown has 3 children. There's no bathroom in her house.
It's a shame. Mrs. Brown has 3 children and no bathroom in her house.
After each of the following sentences, there will be a pause for you to respond, and then you will hear one of the expressions of protest used correctly. 1. The windows in the Robinsons' house are always dirty. They never clean them.
It's a disgrace.
2. People are always throwing litter into our front garden. It's very untidy.
It's an absolute scandal.
3. Old Mr. Stevens is 83. He lives alone. No one ever visits him.
It's a shame.
4. Our house is smaller than yours. We pay more rent.
It's not right.
5. The children next door have broken our doorbell. Their father refuses to pay for a new one.
It's all wrong.
6. The Andersons have been on the housing list 6 months. They've just been offered a council flat. We've been on the list 6 years.
It's not fair.
Oral C. Listening and choosing. Students preparing for the Cambridge First Certificate will have to practice listening to comprehension passages and answering 5 questions on each one. For each question, there will be 4 possible answers: A, B, C, and D, from which the student chooses the best in relation to the text. In the examination, each passage is read twice. The first time at normal speed, the second time with pauses to allow the student to check answers. Look at page 4 in your textbook. Listen to the following letter, which will be read once, and then see how to choose the correct answers. This is a letter from a girl to her friend, and it's about the terraced houses in Salt Lane.
I hope you're getting on well in your new flat. It must seem funny moving up north after all these years. But I expect you and John will soon get used to it. Anyway, I thought you might like to know what's been going on down here. I enclose a copy of a letter in this week's local paper. It's quite exciting. Everyone's talking about it. As you see, it's about those terraced houses in Salt Lane near the gasworks. Maureen, one of the girls who works in the supermarket, says her mother-in-law lived there at one time, and she says the condition of the houses is an absolute disgrace. There's damp everywhere, no proper kitchens or bathrooms, and would you believe it, a lot of the tenants actually have to share a sink on the landing. As for privacy, the walls are like paper. and you can hear your next-door neighbour turn over in bed. I think it's a shame for people to have to live like that, don't you? Maureen says the council have been promising to do something about it for ages. But of course, it's not really their business, because they don't own the land. They agree it's all wrong, but that's about as far as it goes. No one really seems to care. Maureen says the only thing to do is to blow up the lot, gasworks included, and then perhaps they'd have to move the people into decent homes. Anyhow, Pat and I are going along to the protest meeting at the town hall. There are sure to be fireworks.
Now here is some further practice in listening comprehension, which you will hear read once. The questions are on pages 6 and 7 in your textbook. Passage 1. A letter to a local paper.
Dear Sir, I am writing to draw your attention to the appalling conditions in which the residents of Salt Lane are obliged to live. I feel it necessary to publicize this state of affairs as widely as possible. As your readers no doubt know, Salt Lane is composed of terraced houses, and one side of the road backs on to the gasworks. The houses and the land on which they are built belong to the gas company. The tenants who occupy these houses, many of whom have been living there for several years, are mostly immigrants and foreign workers who have settled in this country, and the majority are employed by the gas company. The houses are in a deplorable condition, more or less slums. The council agrees that Salt Lane is a public scandal, but since they do not own the property, they are not prepared to do anything about it. This is bad enough, but my concern is chiefly with the unfortunate residents who have been trying to manage for years with no bathrooms, damp walls, badly lit stairs, and frequently only the use of a shared outside toilet. Such conditions are intolerable today. It has accordingly been decided to hold a protest meeting in the town hall on Friday next at 8 p.m. to consider what action should be taken. All in sympathy are invited to attend. Yours faithfully, John Miller.
Passage 2. A letter from the export manager of a firm to a business friend.
Dear Jim, I'm sending this to your home address because it's really in the nature of a private inquiry, for the present anyway. I wonder if you're able to throw any light on the situation as regards Salt Lane. Is it really a fact that those old houses are being pulled down to make room for new office blocks? I don't need to tell you how cramped and old-fashioned our present offices are. As a matter of fact, we've been trying to find more suitable premises for about 2 years now, and from our point of view, Salt Lane is ideal, as it's near the station and not too far from the town centre. Do you know who we apply to at this stage to be put on a waiting list of prospective tenants? Of course, we can't make a firm offer until we know what sort of accommodation is available and what the rental and other costs are likely to be, but we are very interested. The conditions we've been putting up with for the last few years are becoming impossible now that our export trade is expanding so rapidly. At present, I'm sharing an office with the sales manager and 2 secretaries, and what with the telephone and the typewriters, it's practically impossible to hold a reasonable conversation with a client. Between you and me, the sales manager and I don't get on too well, but that's not really the point. The main thing is, we desperately need more space. Our present small offices are an absolute disgrace for a firm with our reputation, so much so that I take clients out to lunch more often than not, and that isn't doing my waistline any good either. Perhaps you'd give me a ring at home one evening. I'm usually home by 6. Yours, Bill.
Passage 3. A letter from the managing director of a firm to a property company.
Dear Sirs, I understand that your company has recently purchased the freehold of the land in Salt Lane and proposes to pull down the existing houses and erect office blocks on the site. It so happens that my company is interested in acquiring larger accommodation, as our present premises are insufficient for our needs. We require at least 5 good-sized rooms, including one suitable for use as the managing director's office, plus adequate toilet facilities and storage room. We are prepared to pay a reasonable rent, taking into account the annual rate of inflation, but are also ready to consider buying, depending on the type of premises and the price asked. For your information, we are a small export agency, dealing mainly in high-class office equipment, and our business has greatly increased since entry into the common market. We plan to open a branch office in Amsterdam in the new year, and possibly another in Hamburg at a later date. It is therefore essential for our head office in Britain to be not only functional, but suitably impressive. I look forward to hearing from you at your convenience. Yours faithfully, William Bracewhite, Managing Director.
Unit 2. Traffic Problems. Oral A. Dialogue. 2 cars have collided at a crossroads, and a woman driver is quite convinced that it was the man driver's fault.
Imbecile! Idiot! Why didn't you look where you were going? You ran into me just as I was turning into the high street.
I'm very sorry, madam, but you didn't give a signal.
Didn't give a signal? I should think not, indeed. I had the right of way. Don't you know your highway code?
Of course I do, madam, but I'm sorry to say that when you came to the crossroads, you didn't notice—
I noticed, all right. I noticed you were driving much too fast. Positively dangerously.
I'm afraid you're making a mistake, madam. As it happens, I just looked at my speedometer when I reached the crossroads, and I was driving well below the speed limit. After all, this is a built-up area.
You'd just looked at the speedometer. That shows you weren't paying proper attention to the road. And just look what happened. You crashed into my car, you dented the bumper, you broke one of my headlamps, you scratched the bonnet, to say nothing of the fact that you terrified me so that I was completely speechless with fright.
Speechless, madam? I'm sorry to hear that, and I'd like to apologise for the damage I did to your car. Nevertheless, if you'd been driving a little more carefully—
Carefully? The whole thing was entirely your fault. I'd only come from the garage up the road. My car had just been serviced, and I'd been collecting it. Of course I was driving carefully.
I'm sure you thought you were driving with due care and attention, madam, but I very much regret to tell you that you were exceeding the speed limit, and what's more—
Now just you listen to me. I wasn't driving carelessly. I wasn't driving too fast. My brakes were in perfect order. My windscreen was spotlessly clean. My tyres were in excellent condition. My driving mirror was angled correctly, but you,
Me, madam?
behaved most irresponsibly, driving straight over a crossroads like that without even looking to see if another car was coming.
I'm sorry you think that, madam, but the fact is the traffic lights were against you. They'd gone red just before you got to them. In the circumstances, I'm afraid I must ask you for your name and address.
My name and address? You give me yours first.
With pleasure, madam. Here's my card.
Inspector Robert Simpson, Downshire Police. But how was I to know you were a policeman? You weren't even wearing your uniform.
Plain clothes duty, madam. I was conducting a survey on the causes of road accidents in this area. Now, can I have your name and address, please, madam?
1. The woman driver thought the man had run into her car because
he wasn't looking where he was going.
2. Why didn't the woman driver bother to give a signal?
Because she had the right of way.
3. What did the woman driver notice when she came to the crossroads?
She noticed that the man driver was driving much too fast.
4. How did the man driver know he wasn't exceeding the speed limit?
Because he'd just looked at his speedometer.
5. What damage had been done to the woman driver's car?
The bumper was dented, one of the headlights was broken, and the bonnet was scratched.
6. Why was the man driver surprised when the woman driver described herself as speechless?
Because she had been talking a lot.
7. What reason did the woman driver give for her car being in good condition?
It had just been serviced.
8. The woman driver thought the accident was entirely
the man's fault.
9. Why did the woman driver accuse the man driver of driving irresponsibly?
Because he drove over a crossroads without looking.
And 10. What was the real cause of the accident?
The woman had crossed the traffic lights when they were red.
Oral B. Making apologies. Notice how, in the dialogue, the man driver apologizes to the woman driver. He uses the following phrases.
I'm very sorry, madam. I'm sorry to say that I'm afraid. I'm sorry to hear that. I'd like to apologize for. I very much regret to tell you. I'm sorry you think that.
Here are some other ways of making apologies.
I must apologize for. I'm afraid I have to apologize for. I hope you'll forgive me for. Please forgive me for. I don't know how to tell you, but.
Note carefully that the forms of apology, which include the word for, are followed by the gerund ing. I must apologize for damaging your car. I hope you'll forgive me for breaking one of your headlights. Now see if you can apologize using these different forms, like this. Crashing into your car.
I must apologize for crashing into your car.
Damaging your car.
I hope you'll forgive me for damaging your car.
Crashed into your car.
I'm afraid I crashed into your car.
Damaged your car.
I don't know how to tell you, but I damaged your car.
In the exercise that follows, use A. One of the forms of apology with for, and B. One of the other forms. There will be a pause after each phrase for you to respond, and then you will hear one of the forms of apology used correctly. 1A. Running over your dog.
I hope you'll forgive me for running over your dog.
1B. Ran over your dog.
I don't know how to tell you, but I ran over your dog.
2A. Denting the bumpers.
I must apologize for denting the bumpers.
2B. Dented the bumpers.
I'm sorry to say that I dented the bumpers.
3A. Smashing the headlights.
Please forgive me for smashing the headlight.
3B. Smashed the headlights.
I'm afraid I smashed the headlights.
4A. Scratching the bonnet.
I'm afraid I have to apologize for scratching the bonnet.
4B. Scratched the bonnet.
I'm very sorry, madam. I scratched the bonnet.
5A. Not giving a signal.
I'd like to apologize for not giving a signal.
5B. Didn't give a signal.
I'm sorry you think that I didn't give a signal.
6A. Losing your bicycle.
I hope you'll forgive me for losing your bicycle.
6B. Lost your bicycle.
I very much regret to tell you I lost your bicycle.
7A. Damaging your brakes.
Please forgive me for damaging your brakes.
7B. Damaged your brakes.
I'm sorry to say I damaged your brakes.
8A. Crashing into your scooter.
I must apologize for crashing into your scooter.
8B. Crashed into your scooter.
I don't know how to tell you, but I crashed into your scooter.
Unit 3. Amusements. Oral A. Dialogue. Lucy wants Peter to come to a charity fair that she is helping to organize, but Peter is not very enthusiastic when she telephones him.
1234592.
Is that you, Peter?
Yes, who's that?
It's Lucy. Listen, there's going to be a big charity fair in our village next month in aid of handicapped children. Susanna Brown, the film star, is opening it.
Susanna Brown? I hope she'll be wearing more clothes than she was in Shoot the Lady, or she'll cause a bit of a sensation.
Of course she will. As a matter of fact, she'll be dressed as Britannia.
Britannia? Susanna Brown?
Why not? She'll make a very good Britannia. The fair is going to have a theme, you see. Britain through the ages. And all the stall holders will be wearing period costumes. You know, ancient Britain's Victorian ladies, that sort of thing. Everyone's helping, even the school children. Miss Hobbs, the headmistress, says the children will have made 200 Union Jacks by the end of this week, and she's sure they'll be dreaming in red, white and blue for the next 6 months at least. Anyway, what I want to know is, would you like to come? It's going to be a lot of fun.
It doesn't sound much like my idea of fun.
Oh, but it will be, you'll see. There'll be a hoopla and a coconut shy and all sorts of competitions.
You mean guessing the weight of a cake, that kind of thing?
I expect so. And there'll be quite a few raffles. One of the local farmers is raffling a pig.
I don't want a pig.
Well, never mind about the pig then. There'll be a greasy pole and a donkey derby, oh, and a shooting gallery. You know how good you are at shooting. Do come. You'll be able to show Stephen how much better you are than he is.
Stephen? Who's Stephen?
Oh, he's the doctor's nephew. He'll be going in for absolutely everything. Weightlifting, crazy golf, the lot. He's practicing for the weightlifting now. He says he'll have lifted twice his own weight in another couple of days.
Rubbish.
I don't know. He'll have been practicing for a month after all. Anyhow, will you come?
Well,
What about coming down this weekend and doing a bit of practicing yourself?
weightlifting?
Yes, in a way. The fair's only a couple of weeks off, and there'll be a lot to do before then. I shall need some help, moving a couple of rather heavy tables down from the attic, and the boys' club won't be able to put the refreshment tent up by themselves. How about it?
I'm afraid I can't. I'm booked up on Sunday.
Oh, well, why don't you just come down for Saturday then? I know. Let's spend all Saturday afternoon practicing crazy golf. Then we'll be sure to win.
I'm sorry I can't manage it. I shall be in Manchester on Saturday.
But you are coming to the fair, aren't you?
No thanks. I'll send you a cheque instead. £10 will be a small price to pay for preserving my sanity. Have a good time. I'll be thinking of you on the great day. Bye.
That man. Really? I bet he's not going to Manchester. He'll say anything to get out of doing any hard work. He's the laziest man in England.
Now ask and answer the following questions on the dialogue, being careful to use the correct future tenses where necessary. 1. Ask who will be opening the fair.
Who will be opening the fair?
2. What does Peter say about Susanna Brown?
He hopes she'll be wearing more clothes than she was in Shoot the Lady.
3. Ask and answer what the theme of the fair is going to be.
What is the theme of the fair going to be? Britain through the ages.
4. What sort of clothes will the stallholders be wearing?
They'll be wearing period costumes.
5. Ask how many Union Jacks the children will have made by the end of the week.
How many Union Jacks will the children have made by the end of the week?
6. Ask and answer what sort of amusements there will be.
What sort of amusements will there be? There will be hoopla, a coconut shy, and all sorts of competitions.
7. What is one of the farmers going to do?
He's going to raffle a pig.
8. What will Peter be able to show Stephen?
He'll be able to show Stephen that he is better at shooting than him.
9. Ask and answer what Stephen will have done before the date of the fair.
What will Stephen have done before the date of the fair? He'll have managed to lift twice his own weight.
10. Why will Lucy need Peter's help?
Because she'll need him to move a couple of heavy tables down from the attic.
11. What won't the boys' club be able to do by themselves?
They won't be able to put the refreshment tent up.
12. Ask where Peter will be on Saturday.
Where will Peter be on Saturday?
13. Ask and answer how much Peter is going to send Lucy.
How much is Peter going to send Lucy? He's going to send her £10.
14. What does Peter tell Lucy he'll be doing on the day of the fair?
He'll be thinking of her.
15. Why does Lucy think Peter is the laziest man in England?
Because he'll say anything to get out of doing any hard work.
Oral B. Making and accepting invitations. In the dialogue you have been listening to, Lucy used the following phrases.
Would you like to come? Will you come? What about coming? How about? Why don't you? Let's.
These phrases are usually used between people who know each other fairly well and are on informal terms. For example,
Would you like to come to Pete's party tomorrow? Will you come to the cinema with me tonight? What about going to the pop concert next week? How about having a picnic one afternoon? Why don't you visit us when you're in London? Let's all go to the circus on Friday after work.
here are some more formal ways of issuing an invitation or suggesting an activity.
I wonder if you'd like to. I wonder if you'd care to. Would it interest you to? I should be delighted if you'd. Would you be able to? Do you happen to be free on?
These phrases are more usually used when you don't know the person very well and want to phrase your invitation very politely. For example,
I wonder if you'd like to see the Picasso exhibition at the State Gallery. I wonder if you'd care to come to a lecture on archaeology with me. Would it interest you to visit Oldbury Castle on Sunday? I should be delighted if you'd come to dinner with us one evening. Would you be able to come to the opera next week? Do you happen to be free on Thursday? I have 2 tickets for the motor show.
Exercise 1. Complete the following sentences using some of the different phrases you have just learnt. Use the verb go in each sentence. For example, cinema. Let's.
Let's go to the cinema.
Theatre. Would you?
Would you like to go to the theatre?
Now you do it. Number 1. Fair. Why don't we?
Why don't we go to the fair?
2. Seaside. How about?
How about going to the seaside?
3. Country. What about?
What about going to the country?
4. Pop concert. Let's.
Let's go to a pop concert.
5. Circus. I wonder if.
I wonder if you'd like to go to the circus.
6. Zoo. Would you be able?
Would you be able to go to the zoo?
7. Art gallery. Would you like?
Would you like to go to an art gallery?
8. Football match. Would it interest you?
Would it interest you to go to a football match?
Exercise 2. So far, we have only discussed ways of issuing an invitation. But now, here are some phrases of acceptance.
Thank you very much. I'd like to very much. I'd love to. That'd be very nice. That's a good idea. Yes, let's. That's very kind of you.
Notice how these are used in the following sentences. A. Would you like to come to dinner on Saturday?
Thank you very much.
B. I wonder if you'd care to see the Rembrandt exhibition.
I'd like to very much.
C. Why don't you come to our party on Saturday?
I'd love to.
D. Would it interest you to see over the castle?
That'd be very nice.
E. How about coming to the swimming pool with us?
That's a good idea.
F. Let's go to the cinema, shall we?
Yes, let's.
G. I should be delighted if you'd visit us when you're in London.
That's very kind of you.
Exercise 3. Now respond to the following invitations using the most appropriate phrases of acceptance. After each invitation, there will be a pause, and then you will hear one of the phrases of acceptance used correctly. Number 1. I wonder if you'd care to see the new production of Hamlet at the National Theatre.
I'd like to very much.
2. Would you like to come to a poetry reading at the Drama Club next week?
Thank you very much.
3. Why don't you come to the football match on Saturday?
I'd love to.
4. How about going for a run in the car?
That'd be very nice.
5. Let's spend the day in the country, shall we?
Yes, let's.
6. What about going for a bathe after supper?
I'd love to.
7. I should be delighted if you'd come to the ballet with us.
That's very kind of you.
8. Why don't we go 10-pin bowling tonight?
That's a good idea.
Oral D. Listening comprehension. Listen to the news item that will be read to you, and then answer the questions on page 54 of your textbook. Choose one letter only, A, B, C, or D, for each of your answers.
Now that the difficulties of selection and the state of the ground have been finally resolved, the cup final between Red Rovers and White Hart United will, after all, take place next Saturday at Parsons Green Stadium, as was originally planned, instead of on the White Hart United ground, as was later suggested. It is estimated that about 10,000 Red Rovers supporters will be travelling from Roverdale for the match, and there will be a large number of police and special constables assisting in the control of the crowds at the stadium. British Rail are putting on 3 extra trains from Roverdale for Red Rovers supporters only. All tickets for these trains will have to be reserved in advance, and officials will be keeping a strict watch for any signs of vandalism. The big question is whether Red Rovers will be able to retain their title as holders of the Cup. If they do, they will be the first team to have held it for 4 years in succession. In view of this formidable opposition, White Hart United will probably be feeling a little apprehensive when the moment comes for kick-off. Their supporters will, of course, be wearing their familiar colours of white and gold, and bringing with them their famous mascot, Gloria the Goat. It is, of course, impossible to predict at this stage what the outcome will be. Red Rovers are regarded as the stronger side, but there are doubts whether their goalie, Dick Sharp, will be fit to play after a recent injury. If he is, he won't have missed a match this season. Not bad going for a 19-year-old. Our commentator, Reg Nowell, will be at the ground and will be bringing you a kick-by-kick account of every stage of the match. His commentary will begin at 2 p.m. in good time before the kick-off at 2:30. Don't forget, tune in on Saturday 2 p.m. for the Match of the Year.
Unit 4, Education. Oral A. Dialogue. Mr. Harris has come to see the headmaster of his son's school to ask his advice about his son's further education.
Good morning, Mr. Harris. Do sit down. I understand you'd like to have a word with me about William.
Yes, that's right, Headmaster. I felt I should see you as soon as possible before William does anything he'll regret.
Regret, Mr. Harris?
Well, you see, he's set his heart on becoming an artist, and my wife and I think he ought to take up something more secure. I mean, even if he went to art school, there'd be no guarantee he could get a good job afterwards.
He could probably teach, Mr. Harris.
He wouldn't like that. He says he wouldn't be a teacher if it were the last job on earth. Oh, I beg your pardon, Headmaster, I didn't mean...
Not at all, Mr. Harris. I wouldn't have been a teacher myself if I'd had my way. I'd have been an actor if my parents had let me, so I have some sympathy with William's problems. Now, let's see. If he wants to be an artist, he'll have to decide what sort of artist he wants to be.
I don't quite follow you, Headmaster.
Well, what I mean is, if he wanted to be a commercial artist, graphics, cartoons, that sort of thing, he might do very well if he took an art course at a technical college, and besides, the entry qualifications wouldn't be so stiff. On the other hand, if he wants to go to one of the major art schools, you better not raise his hopes too high. There's a good deal of competition to get accepted, and he'd have to have at least 3 O-levels and 2 A's at good grades before he'd even be considered. Oh, and there's another thing. He'd have to do a year's foundation course first, probably at another college. He'd get a grant, of course, provided he'd got the right O's and A's.
But art, Headmaster, it's so chancy. I wish he weren't so set on it.
I don't think you should stand in his way, Mr. Harris. If I were you, I'd let him decide for himself. You'd better accept the fact that nowadays young people don't worry about security the way we did when we were young.
Well, I must admit my wife and I would have felt much happier if he'd chosen to do something else. Perhaps it's still not too late for him to change his mind. You know, I could get him a good job with my own firm if he had a science degree.
From what I know of him, Mr. Harris, I don't think he's the sort of boy to change his mind, not in a hurry, at any rate. In any case, I think you ought to let him decide.
But an artist, Headmaster, what's he going to live on?
Making a career as an artist isn't easy, of course. It would be a good idea if you had a talk with our art master, Mr. Sims. He can tell you more about the possibilities than I can. Now, I know he thinks very highly of William's work, though you better not tell William I said so.
I suppose I shouldn't worry so much, Headmaster. But I can't say I like the idea. Painting pictures and that, it doesn't seem like real work to me.
On second thoughts, I think the best thing would be for me to have a word with Mr. Sims first and find out what he thinks of William's chances of being accepted at art school. It's a very liberal training, you know, not just painting pictures.
No, of course not. Thank you very much for your advice, Headmaster. I'd be grateful if you'd let me know what Mr. Sims says.
I'll do that, Mr. Harris. And in the meantime, don't worry about William. He'll be all right, so long as he does as well as he's doing at present.
Exercise 1. Now answer the following questions on the dialogue, being careful to use the correct conditional forms where necessary. Number 1. What do Mr. and Mrs. Harris feel William ought to do?
They feel he ought to take up something more secure than art.
2. What would be a major disadvantage for William after he left art school?
There'd be no guarantee he'd get a good job afterwards.
3. How does the headmaster suggest William might subsequently earn a living?
He suggests William could teach.
4. What does William feel about teaching as a career?
He says he wouldn't be a teacher if it were the last job on earth.
5. What would the headmaster have liked to do when he was young?
The headmaster would have liked to be an actor.
6. Why might it be easier for William to be accepted at a technical college?
Because the entry qualifications wouldn't be so stiff.
7. What would William have to do before he went to art school?
He'd have to do a year's foundation course first.
8. Would William get a grant if he was accepted?
He'd get a grant provided he'd got the right O's and A's.
9. What does the headmaster think Mr. Harris had better do?
He'd better accept the fact that nowadays young people don't worry about security.
10. Why does the headmaster think it would be the best thing for him to speak to the art master first?
Because he could find out about William's chances of being accepted at art school.
11. What does Mr. Harris ask the headmaster to do?
To let him know what Mr. Sims, the art master, says.
12. What is the headmaster's opinion of William's prospects?
He'll be all right so long as he does as well as he's doing at present.
Exercise 2. Respond to the following questions. There will be a pause for you to reply, after which you will hear a suggested answer. For example, what will you do if it rains? I'll take my umbrella. Now you do it. What will you do if 1.
You oversleep tomorrow.
I'll be late for work.
2.
You have a holiday this year.
I'll go to the mountains.
3.
You win £100 in the lottery.
I'll buy some new clothes.
4.
You don't know the way.
I'll ask someone.
5.
You lose your bus ticket.
I'll tell the ticket inspector.
6.
You break your ankle.
I'll call the doctor.
Exercise 3. What would you do if you saw a fight? I'd call a policeman. Now you do it. What would you do if 1.
You heard a strange noise at night.
I'd get up and investigate.
2.
You found £5 in the street.
I'd take it to the police station.
3.
You forgot your keys.
I'd break a window.
4.
You didn't understand English?
I'd ask someone to translate.
5.
You lost your wallet?
I'd inform the police.
6.
You smelt something burning.
I'd put it out.
Exercise 4. What would you have done if you'd been late? I'd have apologized. Now you do it. What would you have done if 1.
You'd found a beetle in your soup.
I'd have told the waiter.
2.
You'd broken your friend's radio.
I'd have offered to have it repaired.
3.
You'd spilt some wine on the carpet.
I'd have wiped it up.
4.
You'd arrived on the wrong day for the party.
I'd have apologized.
5.
You'd forgotten your wife's birthday.
I'd have bought her a present the next day.
6.
You'd punctured one of your bicycle tires.
I'd have mended it.
Oral B. Giving advice. In the dialogue, when the headmaster was advising Mr. Harris what to do about his son William, he used the following expressions of advice.
I don't think you should. If I were you, I think you ought to... You'd better not. It would be a good idea if... I think the best thing would be...
Listen to these sentences in which the second speaker advises the first what to do or not to do. 1.
I'm going to stay away from school tomorrow. I haven't finished my history homework.
I don't think you should stay away so near the examinations.
2.
I'm very worried about Susan. She seems unhappy in her new class.
If I were you, I'd have a word with her teacher.
3.
I'm afraid John hasn't got much chance of getting his degree unless he does more work.
I think you ought to tell him so before it's too late.
4.
I don't understand how to do this equation. Can you help me?
You'd better ask Mary. She's much better at algebra than I am.
5.
Do you think John would help me move the piano?
You'd better not ask him now. He's writing a composition.
6.
I'm always so tired in the morning. I still feel half asleep when I get to school.
It would be a good idea to try going to bed a bit earlier.
7.
Where can I find out about evening classes in Spanish?
I think the best thing would be to ring up your local library. They'll have all the information.
Using as many of the different expressions as possible, give advice to a friend who 1. Feels ill.
If I were you, I'd go to the doctor's.
2. Has toothache.
I think you ought to see a dentist.
3. Has lost his wallet.
You'd better go to the police station.
4. Has failed his exam.
It would be a good idea if you sat it again.
5. Has been arrested for speeding.
You'd better not argue with the police.
6. Wants to learn English.
I think the best thing would be to go to a good English school.
7. Has broken his glasses.
You'd better go to an optician immediately.
8. Has been rude to his teacher.
I think you ought to apologize.
9. Has damaged a friend's record player.
It would be a good idea if you offered to have it mended.
10. Is always late for work.
If I were you, I'd get up earlier.
Oral D. Listening comprehension. Listen to the passage that will be read to you and choose the correct answers from page 73 in your textbook. Choose one letter only, A, B, C, or D, for each of your answers.
Education has acquired a kind of snob value in modern times. We are no longer content to be honest craftsmen, skilled at our work through years of patient practice. Nowadays, if we want to get a decent job, we have to have a piece of paper. If we want to get promotion in even the humblest job, we have to obtain a certificate or a diploma first. We may know that we would be better at the job than the man with the paper qualifications, but our experience and practical skills are regarded as relatively unimportant. Johnson would have been manager by now if he'd taken the trouble to get a degree, his colleagues say. He's a clever man. He could have done anything if he'd had a proper education. I wonder if, as time goes on, we shall discover that many people whose practical experience and ability would have been enormously useful to their employers have been rejected on the grounds that they are insufficiently qualified. Would it not be better to allow people to become expert in the way most suited to them, rather than oblige them to follow a set course of instruction which may offer no opportunity for them to develop skills in which they would have become expert if left to themselves?
Unit 5. Holidays and Water Sports. Oral A. Dialogue. Mr. Hope has called at a travel agency to inquire about holidays.
Good morning, sir. Can I help you?
I wonder if you could give me some information about active holidays.
Active holidays, sir? Can you tell me exactly what you mean, please?
Well, you see, when I go on holiday, I like to take plenty of exercise. I don't like sitting around and doing nothing. I get enough of that in my office. What I mean to say is, I'm the sort of man who enjoys swimming, water skiing, that sort of thing. I like anything to do with water, and I don't mind roughing it. I've always been used to looking after myself. When I was in the army, I used to get up at 5 every morning, just to see the sunrise.
Yes, sir. Very interesting. Active holidays, let me see. Oh, yes. What about skin diving, sir? We can offer you a fortnight off the coast of Cornwall, all inclusive of 1 week skin diving and 1 week shark fishing with the local fishermen. It's a very good bargain.
Shark fishing? I don't think I fancy shark fishing. Is there any chance of getting a bit of sailing in that part of Cornwall?
We don't do many sailing holidays, sir. They're mostly organised by the sailing schools. But rowing, canoeing, yes. Are you interested in rowing, sir?
Well, I did a lot of rowing when I was at university, but I'm a bit out of practice these days. I don't think I've handled a pair of oars since I went boating on the Thames 10 years ago. No, I don't think I'd care to spend my holiday rowing.
Try looking through some of these brochures, sir, and see if there's anything that appeals to you.
Well, now where do I start? All these advertisements are very confusing.
Perhaps if you turned the brochures up the right way, sir, you'd find them easier to read. There's an interesting one on page 5, pony trekking. Have you ever thought of pony trekking, sir? I remember you saying you wanted an active holiday.
Pony trekking? I'm afraid I've never done any riding. It seems a bit late now. No, I think somewhere near the sea, preferably warm, but it must be in England. I don't want to do a lot of travelling.
There's a very good hotel at St. Mildred's-on-Sea, sir. That's on the south coast.
Do you happen to know if there's a golf course there?
I'm afraid not, sir. You have to go to Barley Bay if you want to golf.
Barley Bay? That's rather off the beaten track, isn't it? Still, I must remember to tell my brother-in-law about that. He likes a quiet place with a bit of golf. I don't think it's the sort of thing I'm looking for, though. Really, it's all very difficult. Would you mind letting me have some of these leaflets and brochures to take home?
Not at all, sir. Take as many as you like.
Thank you. I'll enjoy looking at them tonight. Of course, you never know. I may change my mind and go abroad after all. I always say there's nothing does you so much good as sunbathing in the Mediterranean. Everyone ought to relax once a year. Yes, indeed. That's what I always say.
Oral B. Drills and Comprehension. Gerunds. Answer the following questions on the dialogue. In each case, use the gerund form given in the passage. These questions are very simple and are intended to familiarize you with the use of the gerund, in contrast to the questions on the second passage in this unit, which practice the use of the infinitive. Try to answer quickly. Number 1. What does Mr. Hope get enough of in his office?
Sitting around and doing nothing.
2. What sort of things does Mr. Hope enjoy doing?
He enjoys swimming and water skiing.
3. What doesn't Mr. Hope mind doing?
He doesn't mind roughing it.
4. What has Mr. Hope been used to doing?
He's been used to looking after himself.
5. What does the fortnight's holiday off the coast of Cornwall include?
It includes 1 week's skin diving and 1 week's shark fishing.
6. What doesn't Mr. Hope fancy doing?
He doesn't fancy shark fishing.
7. What does Mr. Hope ask if there is any chance of doing?
If there's any chance of sailing.
8. What does the travel agent ask if Mr. Hope is interested in doing?
If he's interested in rowing.
9. What did Mr. Hope do a lot of when he was at university?
He did a lot of rowing.
10. What does the travel agent suggest Mr. Hope tries doing?
He suggests Mr. Hope tries riding.
11. What does the travel agent remember about Mr. Hope?
He remembers him saying he wanted an active holiday.
12. What has Mr. Hope never done?
He's never done any riding.
13. What doesn't Mr. Hope want to do?
He doesn't want to do a lot of travelling.
14. What does Mr. Hope ask the travel agent if he would mind doing?
If he would mind letting him have some brochures and leaflets.
15. What is Mr. Hope going to enjoy doing?
He's going to enjoy looking at them.
Infinitives. Listen to this extract from one of the travel brochures that Mr. Hope took home to look at.
For over 20 years, Super Tours have been planning holidays to suit individual needs. We don't offer to do the impossible, we just want you to enjoy yourselves. It is the personal responsibility of our party leaders to make sure that your holiday is a success. This year, we have arranged a number of coach tours to the continent for people interested in seeing the capitals of Europe. And for those who prefer to do something more energetic, we offer a wide variety of holidays where our trained experts will be ready to give you all the help and guidance you need. We aim to please. If you haven't yet decided on your holiday, why not look through this brochure? When you have made your choice, telephone us and we shall be happy to assist you in every way we can. But we do recommend you to book early. There is no need to worry about cancellation. If you wish to alter your booking at a later date, all you have to do is to let us know at once in writing. We will do our best to satisfy you, but for this service, we are unfortunately obliged to make a small extra charge. We do, however, reserve the right to make changes of timetable or itinerary if this becomes necessary due to circumstances beyond our control.
Number 1. What have Super Tours been planning for over 20 years?
Holidays to suit individual tastes.
Number 2. What is the personal responsibility of their party leaders?
To make sure your holiday is a success.
Number 3. Trained experts are ready to help people who prefer.
To do something more energetic.
Number 4. The aim of super tours is.
To please.
Number 5. What will super tours be happy to do?
To assist you in every way they can.
Number 6. What do they recommend you to do?
To book early.
Number 7. If you have to make a cancellation, there is no need.
To worry.
Number 8. What do you have to let super tours know in writing?
If you wish to alter your booking.
Number 9. What are super tours obliged to do in some circumstances?
To make a small extra charge.
Number 10. Super tours reserve the right to.
Make changes of timetable.
On page 94 of your textbook, you will see a list of words. Skis, aqualung, tennis racket, fishing rod, camera, oars, boots, binoculars, bike, tent. Now respond to the following statements, being careful to choose the appropriate word from the list. For example, I hope to do a lot of skiing on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my skis?
Number 1. I hope to do a lot of skin diving on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my aqualung?
Number 2. I hope to do a lot of bird watching on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my binoculars?
Number 3. I hope to do a lot of photography on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my camera?
Number 4. I hope to do a lot of climbing on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my boots?
Number 5. I hope to do a lot of fishing on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my fishing rod?
Number 6. I hope to do a lot of skiing on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my skis?
Number 7. I hope to do a lot of cycling on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my bike?
Number 8. I hope to play a lot of tennis on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my racket?
Number 9. I hope to do a lot of camping on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my tent?
Number 10. I hope to do a lot of rowing on holiday.
Oh, would you like to borrow my oars?
Oral C. Asking for information. Listen to the dialogue between the travel agent and Mr. Hope again, and notice the following phrases.
I wonder if you could give me some information about. Can you tell me? Is there any chance of? Do you happen to know if?
Mr. Hope says,
I wonder if you could give me some information about active holidays. Can you tell me exactly what you mean, please? Is there any chance of getting a bit of sailing in that part of Cornwall? Do you happen to know if there's a golf course there?
Listen to the following phrases and repeat each one. Number 1.
I wonder if you can give me some information about bird watching here.
Number 2.
Can you tell me how much it costs to go to Brighton?
Number 3.
Is there any chance of getting any fishing in Cornwall?
Number 4.
Do you happen to know if there's a sailing school there?
Number 5.
I wonder if you can give me some information about camping holidays.
Number 6.
Can you tell me the number of the flight, please?
Number 7.
Is there any chance of travelling by an earlier train?
And number 8.
Do you happen to know if there's a swimming pool at the hotel?
Unit 6. Crime and Detection. Oral A. Dialogue. A woman has been discovered murdered in the back bedroom of a small country house. Inspector Harvey is questioning Harry Collins, the dead woman's nephew.
Now, Mr. Collins, I'd like you to tell me in your own words exactly how you came to discover the body.
It was terrible, Inspector. I came home a bit late because I'd been to the garage to have my car headlights tested. I put the car in the garage, and then I went round to the back of the house to see if the groceries had been delivered. They're always left in a box at the back door if we're not in, and I thought they might have got wet as it had been raining most of the afternoon. It was then I noticed that a ladder had been propped up against my aunt's bedroom window. That's funny, I thought. So I climbed up it, and then I saw at once that the window had been broken, and the 2 flower pots on the windowsill had disappeared. When I looked inside the room, I saw bits of flower pot and earth and glass lying about on the floor inside, and I guessed that the pots had been used to break the window.
You say bits of glass and broken flower pot were found inside the room?
Yes, that's right, Inspector. I saw at once that the room had been disturbed. Papers had been pulled out of the desk. My aunt's handbag had been torn open, and the little box in which my aunt kept her jewellery had been ripped apart. It was awful. I simply couldn't believe it at first.
You saw all this while you were still on the ladder looking through the window? Wasn't it getting dark? Was the light on?
Well, that was the odd thing. My aunt was very economical about light. She would never have any of the lights turned on until it was absolutely necessary. But when I looked in, the light had already been switched on. Of course, it had been raining pretty heavily till about 6 o'clock, and she may have switched it on so that she could see to read, and then fallen asleep.
You may be right. Please go on, sir.
I managed to get in through the window, and then, of course, I saw her. She was lying on the bed with her mouth open and her eyes sort of staring. I knew at once she'd been murdered. There was a great ugly gash on her forehead where she'd been hit, and blood. You've never seen anything like it. The pillow was soaked with it. I tell you, Inspector, it was ghastly. I didn't know what to do at first. Dear kind old Aunt Edith. It was incredible. Then I sort of came to and realised that, of course, the police would have to be informed immediately, so I ran down to the hall and phoned the police station.
Did you touch anything in the room, sir?
Of course not. There was a hammer lying on the floor near the bed, but I knew enough to know that absolutely nothing must be touched or moved till the police arrived. Well, I mean, everyone knows that much. In detective stories, films and that, it's the first question that's asked when the crime squad arrives.
Do you read a lot of detective stories, sir?
Read? Not many. I watch them more on TV. But they're always the same, aren't they? The criminal always gets caught in the end, doesn't he? There's always some little thing he's forgotten that's discovered right at the end. I often think they're very stupid, these criminals, letting themselves be caught through their own inefficiency.
Quite so, sir. Just one more question. Motive. Can you think of any reason why your aunt should have been murdered? Anyone you know who might have had a reason for wishing her out of the way?
Aunt Edith? Good heavens, no. It's quite extraordinary. She was loved and respected by everyone who knew her, Inspector. I've never heard an unkind word spoken about her. That's why I say it's incredible. It's worse than that. It's appalling.
Murder usually is, sir.
Oral B. Drills and exercises. Exercise 1. Number 1. Why did Mr. Collins come home late?
He'd been to the garage to have his car headlights tested.
Number 2. What were the arrangements about the delivery of his groceries?
If no one was in, they were always left in a box at the back door.
Number 3. How had the ladder been placed?
It had been propped up against his aunt's bedroom window.
Number 4. What had happened to the window?
It had been broken.
Number 5. Why were pieces of flower pot lying inside the room?
The pieces had fallen inside when the window had been broken.
Number 6. What had happened to his aunt's jewel case?
It had been torn open.
Number 7. In what way was his aunt economical about light?
She would never have any of the lights turned on until necessary.
Number 8. Why was there a gash in his aunt's forehead?
She'd been hit with something.
Number 9. What made Mr. Collins telephone for the police?
He suspected his aunt had been murdered.
Number 10. Why didn't Mr. Collins disturb anything in his aunt's room?
He knew nothing must be touched or moved until the police arrived.
Number 11. What always happens at the end of a detective story?
The criminal always gets caught.
Number 12. What did Mr. Collins have to say about his aunt?
He'd never heard an unkind word spoken about her.
Exercise 3. After Inspector Harvey had spoken to Mr. Collins, he went upstairs with a police constable, and they made a further investigation of the bedroom. While the inspector was examining the papers from the desk, the young constable made some further discoveries. The intruder had
cut the telephone wire, smashed the mirror, broken a vase, muddied the carpet, spilt some whiskey, forced open a drawer, left a tap on, turned on the television.
Imagine that you are the young constable, and that you are telling the inspector what you've discovered. For example, unlocked wardrobe.
The wardrobe's been unlocked.
Number 1. Telephone wire cut.
The telephone wire's been cut.
Number 2. Mirror smashed.
The mirror's been smashed.
Number 3. Vase broken.
The vase has been broken.
Number 4. Carpet muddied.
The carpet's been muddied.
Number 5. Whiskey spilt.
The whiskey's been spilt.
Number 6. Drawer forced open.
The drawer's been forced open.
Number 7. Tap left on.
The tap's been left on.
Number 8. Television turned on.
The television's been turned on.
Exercise 4. Listen to each of the following sentences and repeat it. Number 1.
She was stabbed with a knife.
Number 2.
She was shot with a revolver.
Number 3.
They were murdered with an axe.
Number 4.
I was hit with a hammer.
Number 5.
He was strangled with a nylon stocking.
Number 6.
She was smothered with a cushion.
Number 7.
They were tortured with needles.
Number 8.
He was slashed with a razor blade.
Respond to the following statements. For example, a knife was found.
Was it the one she was stabbed with?
Number 1. A revolver was found.
Was it the one she was shot with?
Number 2. A hammer was found.
Was it the one she was hit with?
Number 3. A cushion was found.
Was it the one she was smothered with?
Number 4. Some needles were found.
Were they the ones she was tortured with?
Number 5. A razor blade was found.
Was it the one she was slashed with?
Number 6. A nylon stocking was found.
Was it the one she was strangled with?
Number 7. A knife was found.
Was it the one she was stabbed with?
Number 8. An axe was found.
Was it the one she was murdered with?
Oral D. Expressing surprise and dismay. When he was answering Inspector Harvey's questions, Mr. Collins used the following expressions to describe how he felt when he realized his aunt had been murdered.
It was terrible. It was awful. It was ghastly. It was incredible. It's quite extraordinary. It's appalling.
Now listen to this conversation in which a listener responds to some statements that surprise or dismay her.
When I came in, I found everything, but everything had been thrown on the floor.
How awful.
You've never seen such a mess. The whole room had been turned upside down.
How terrible.
Even my mother's portrait had been slashed.
How ghastly.
And all my best china had been smashed.
How appalling.
And what was very strange, the curtains had been pulled down and cut up into little pieces.
How extraordinary.
But you'll hardly believe it. Absolutely nothing was stolen.
How incredible.
Repeat the expressions that Mrs. White used. Number 1.
How awful.
Number 2.
How terrible.
Number 3.
How ghastly.
Number 4.
How appalling.
Number 5.
How extraordinary.
Number 6.
How incredible.
Exercise 2. Using the most suitable phrase, respond to the following statements. Number 1.
My nephew was arrested for shoplifting yesterday.
How awful.
Number 2.
My neighbour was killed in a car crash on Saturday.
How terrible.
Number 3.
My flat was burgled while I was asleep.
How ghastly.
Number 4.
My husband was mistaken for a dangerous criminal.
How appalling.
Number 5.
My wallet was stolen at the airport on Thursday.
How extraordinary.
Number 6.
My aunt's shop was raided by 2 men in stocking masks.
How incredible.
Oral E. Listening comprehension. Listen to the passage that will be read to you and answer the 5 questions on page 120 in your textbook. You need only choose the letter A, B, C, or D for your answer in each case.
For reasons that were not immediately clear to himself, Inspector Harvey received the impression that Harry Collins had lied when he was interrogated. Somehow, the facts did not quite fit, though it was difficult to say why. Vaguely uneasy, Harvey went round to the back of the house again. The ladder was still there, propped against the bedroom window. He gave it a little push, and it wobbled unsteadily. It didn't look any too safe. It was dusty and cobwebby too, as though it had been kept in a shed unused for long periods. With his foot on one of the rungs, Harvey paused to consider. It had been wet all the afternoon. It hadn't stopped raining till about 6 o'clock, shortly before Harry Collins came home. The flower beds beneath the window looked rich and dark from the rain, and here and there the more delicate flowers had been bruised by the steady downpour. Yet the ladder was perfectly dry. Advancing a step or two up the ladder, Harvey looked up at the window ledge. The old lady had been fond of flowers. According to Harry Collins, 2 flower pots on the window ledge outside had been used to break the window. Harvey looked down. Apart from a few fallen petals from the rain-soaked flowers, there were no traces of broken pots or glass on the flower beds. The window ledge, too, appeared smooth and bare. Surely, thought Harvey, if a flower pot had been used to break the window from outside, it would have left some mess, however slight. What was it Harry had said? I saw bits of flower pot and earth and glass lying about on the floor inside. Didn't this rather suggest that the window had been broken from inside? Perhaps the ladder had been put there afterwards to give the impression that the room had been entered from outside, and that after 6 o'clock, when it had stopped raining. Encouraged by these thoughts, Harvey began to climb further up the ladder. About halfway up, one of the rungs gave way and he fell, cursing, onto the flower bed below.
Unit 7. News and Information. Oral A. Dialogue. Radio Wessex is a small independent local radio station serving the southwest of England.
Good morning. This is Radio Wessex at 5 minutes to 8, and here is the weather forecast for the southwest. The day is likely to be hot and humid. It will be mainly cloudy with a few sunny intervals, but heavy thunderstorms are expected during the afternoon. These will die out by the early evening, and a clear, fine night is expected. Temperatures will rise to 30 degrees centigrade during the day. And now over to Simon Shaw for the traffic news. What have you got for us today, Simon?
Well, it's not a very good picture, I'm afraid. There are road works on the A99 just outside Holchester, and this is causing considerable delay. There's a burst gas main in Holchester High Street, and traffic is building up there. And we've just had news of an accident in Seabourne at the junction of Beach Road and Carter's Lane. It seems to be a pretty serious one. Traffic is being diverted to Cook's Road. There's a heavy tailback, and the police say that anyone who can avoid this route would be well advised to do so. This is Simon Shaw, Radio Wessex reporting.
Thank you, Simon. It's 1 minute to 8. You'll be hearing news of what's been happening in the world and in your area, particularly in 1 minute's time after our break.
On top, spidooby-dooby, on top, spidooby-dooby, on top, spidooby-dooby, on top!
Do you suffer from headaches, nervous tension, funny tummy? Do you miss all the fun because you get that low, sinking feeling just when you ought to be on top of the world? What you need is On Tops. Take On Tops and you'll feel on top. Just 2 tablets dissolved in water and bing! You're feeling great. You're the tops. Take On Tops to be on top. Take On Tops to be on top.
On top, spidooby-dooby, on top, spidooby-dooby, on top, spidooby-dooby, on top!
It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, August the 25th, and this is Radio Wessex bringing you your news. First, the national headlines. The Chancellor of the Exchequer has announced cuts amounting to £600 million in an effort to stabilise Britain's economy in the coming year. This is expected to affect teachers, doctors, civil servants and pensioners. In an angry debate in the Commons last night, the opposition expressed outrage and disgust at these proposals and called on the Chancellor to resign. The motion, however, was carried by a majority of 6. It's going to cost you more to run the family car. The price of petrol is to go up by 2p a gallon from September the 1st. The distributors say this is to offset increased transport costs. The nationwide search for Joey Peters and Dave Summers, the two 11-year-old schoolboys who have been missing from their London homes for 6 weeks, has ended. The boys were found in a youth hostel in the Lake District. They were posing as French schoolboys visiting Britain, but their identity was discovered when a party of genuine French boys arrived at the hostel. Stay tuned for the local news after the break.
Does your house smell? Are you afraid people will notice? Do you have to open the windows before people come to let out the cooking smells, the cigarette smoke, Aunt Ellen's chest liniment, the perfume young Mary bought at the supermarket? Well, stop worrying. Your smells are over. Use Peterson's Sea Air. Fill your house with the salty tang of fresh sea breezes, the pure smell, the right smell. Use the handy bathroom or kitchen-size spray, or the giant economy spray for the whole house. Just one puff, and you're breathing sea air.
Sea air everywhere, fresh and fair. Sea air.
And now a quick rundown of the local news. The Holchester pageant celebrating the bicentenary of the birth of our famous local artist Francis Merriweather will be opened by the mayor at 2:30 p.m. in the recreation ground. In addition to the pageant depicting the life and times of the painter, there will be archery contests, fencing displays and an ox roast. Admission 50p, 10p for children. Mrs. Laura Payne of Seaborn has been awarded first prize in the West Country Amateur Drama Competition for her performance as Desdemona in the Seaborn Players production of Othello in June. The Holchester Senior Citizens Angling Club will be holding their inaugural meeting on Tuesday the 28th of August at 2 p.m. in the Old Town Hall. All interested are invited to attend. A car was stolen about 9 p.m. last night from the Seaborn Cinema car park. It's a green Mini, registration number ARK7892. Anyone seeing this car is asked to telephone the Seaborn Police 153-6666. Do not approach the driver. Well, that's all for now. More news at 10. We'll be going over now to John Daly on Speakeasy, the program where you ask the questions and John...
Oral B. Drills and exercises. Exercise 1. Listen to the weather forecast again, and then answer the following questions. Number 1. Did the presenter say the weather would be cool and fresh?
No, he said it would be hot and humid.
Number 2. Did the presenter say that the thunderstorms would continue all night?
No, he said they would die out by the early evening.
Number 3. How high did he say the temperature would rise during the day?
He said it would rise to about 30 degrees centigrade.
Exercise 3. Listen again to the commercial about On Tops. Then listen to the following conversation between two housewives.
Can I speak to Mary, please?
Who's speaking?
Joan.
Hold on a moment. I'll get her.
Hello, Joan. How are you?
Fine. Look, I simply had to ring you up. I've just been listening to Radio Wessex.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said I'd just been listening to Radio Wessex.
Did you say Radio Essex?
No, I said Radio Wessex.
Oh, well, what about it?
Well, You know I've been suffering from tension.
Attention? I am paying attention.
I didn't say attention. I said I'd been suffering from tension. Anyway, I was listening to this commercial, and it was all about headaches and tension and funny tummy.
Funny Tommy? Who's he?
Tummy, not Tommy. Really, Mary, I do wish you'd listen.
I am listening. You said you'd been listening to a funny commercial.
I didn't say it was funny. It was about On Top.
Oh, that. I heard it too. The man said you ought to stop when you got that sinking feeling. I don't know what he was talking about unless he meant stop and have a cup of coffee or something.
Honestly, Mary, he didn't say stop. He said take On Top. He told everyone to take on tops if they wanted to be on top.
I wish you'd speak more clearly, Joan. You're giving me a nervous headache.
What did you say?
I said you were giving me a nervous headache.
Then you'd better take on top.
Yes, I think we'd better stop. Bye.
Oh, dear. Well, never mind. I'll ring her again later. Now, where's my bottle of on tops?
Answer or complete the following. For example, Joan said she simply had to ring Mary because
she'd just been listening to Radio Wessex.
Number 1. What did Mary think Joan had said?
Mary thought Joan had said Radio Essex.
Number 2. Why did Mary ask who Funny Tommy was?
Because she thought Joan said Funny Tommy instead of Funny Tummy.
Number 3. What did Joan say the commercial was about?
Joan said the commercial was about on tops.
Number 4. What did Mary say when Joan said she wished she'd listen?
Mary said she was listening.
Number 5. What did Mary think the man on the commercial had said?
Mary thought the man had said you ought to stop when you got that sinking feeling.
Number 6. What did Joan say he said?
Joan said he didn't say stop. He said take on tops. And he'd told everyone to take on tops if they wanted to be on top.
Number 7. Why did Mary ask Joan to speak more clearly?
Mary asked Joan to speak more clearly because she was giving her a nervous headache.
Number 8. What did Joan advise Mary to do?
Joan advised Mary to take on tops.
Number 9. When Mary rang off, what did Joan say she would do?
Joan said she would ring her again later.
Number 10. What did Joan finally ask herself?
Joan wondered where her bottle of on-tops was.
Oral D. Making a telephone call. Listen to the following telephone conversation.
Is that Mr. Barker's office?
Mr. Barker's secretary speaking.
This is John Smith. Can I speak to Mr. Barker, please?
I'm afraid he's out at the moment.
Oh, then I'd like to speak to Mr. Mason, please.
I'll put you through. I'm sorry, his line's engaged. Would you like to hold on?
No, thank you. I haven't time. Can I leave a message?
Certainly. What shall I tell him?
Tell him I'll ring later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Exercise 1. Imagine you are the caller. What would you say if 1. You wanted to speak to the managing director?
Can I speak to the managing director, please?
2. You thought the managing director had answered the phone himself.
Is that the managing director?
3. The managing director was out, so you asked to speak to his assistant, Mr. Brown.
Oh, then I'd like to speak to Mr. Brown, please.
4. You wanted to be connected to the sales manager's office.
Can you put me through to the sales manager's office, please?
5. You didn't mind waiting for someone to come to the phone.
All right, I'll hold on.
6. You wanted to leave a message.
Can I leave a message?
7. You decided to telephone again later.
I'll ring again later.
Exercise 2. Suppose you are the person who answers the telephone call. What do you say if 1. The managing director is out?
I'm afraid he's out.
2. You have to connect the caller to another extension.
I'll put you through.
3. The managing director is already talking on another line.
I'm sorry, his line's engaged.
4. You want the caller to wait while you fetch someone.
Hold on a moment. I'll get him.
5. You want to know if the caller would like to leave a message.
Would you like to leave a message?
6. You think the managing director will be back later.
I think he'll be back later.
7. You have never heard of the person the caller asks for.
I'm afraid you've got the wrong number.
Exercise 3. Listen to another telephone conversation.
Can I speak to Mrs. Parkins, please?
I'm afraid she's out.
Well, it's rather urgent. Could you ask her to ring me the moment she comes in?
Well, I'm not sure if I'll be in when she comes back. Can you leave a message?
Yes, all right. Would you tell Mrs. Parkins to contact St. Peter's Hospital immediately she comes in? There's been an accident on the Underground, and her daughter's been slightly hurt. It's nothing serious, only a twisted ankle and shock. I expect she'll see it reported in the evening paper, but in any case, would you please tell her not to worry? Her daughter's quite all right.
Yes, of course. I'll tell her as soon as she gets home, and if I have to go out before that, I'll leave an urgent message by the telephone. St. Peter's Hospital, you said? What's the number, please?
123-7654. Tell her to ask for casualty.
123-7654. Thank you very much. I'll make sure she gets the message.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Mrs. Parkins comes in 5 minutes after this telephone call. Give her the message. Unit 8. Accidents and Illness. Oral A. Dialogue. A workman has fallen from some scaffolding outside a building. He appears to be badly injured. 2 young people are trying to give him first aid.
He looks pretty bad. I think his breathing's stopped. Better try the kiss of life.
I'd rather you took that on. I'm not quite sure how you go about it, but do get on with it. He looks awful.
OK, but I've only practiced it at school, you know. Just keep the crowd back, will you?
Get back there, please. Give us a chance.
Here goes. That's it. He's breathing now. Never give up, that's what they taught us. He'll be okay for a bit. Now, let's just get him in the recovery position. Carefully does it. The ambulance ought to be here any minute.
You'd have thought they'd have turned up by now. Ah, here they come.
I think he's coming round. Take it easy, old chap. Don't try to get up. Just lie still. We're going to take you to hospital. They'll soon put you right.
Make room, please. OK, thank you. Now, let's have a look at the casualty.
You know, I'm glad I tried the kiss of life. I hope it won't come out that I've never really done it before.
I reckon you saved his life. He didn't look as though he was going to get over that fall at first.
Well, they won't really know that till they get him to hospital. It was a good thing he hadn't got a face injury. I don't suppose it would have been so easy then. He was in a bad way all the same. Did you see? One of his legs was all bruised and swollen. There wasn't much blood, but for all I know he may have been bleeding internally. What's the matter with you?
I'm OK. It's just a bit hot. I think I'll take off my jacket.
You know, I think I'd like to take up nursing. I think I might turn out to be a very good nurse. Perhaps I'll put in for one of those short practical courses. I came across an awfully interesting article in one of the Sunday papers about practical nursing. I wonder how many O-levels you have to have.
How would I know? That's about the fourth bright idea you've come up with in the last week. You never get round to any of them.
Well, it's just that I think it's the sort of work I could really take to. I've got to think what I'm going to do when I leave school next year. I might even train to be a doctor. I'm not put off by broken bones and gaping wounds and buckets of blood.
Oh.
Whatever's the matter with you now?
I feel dizzy. I think I'm going to be sick.
Oh, help. Don't say I've got to give you the kiss of life too.
Oral B. Drills and exercises. Exercise 1. Listen to the dialogue again and answer the following questions on it. 1. What does Bob say when he would prefer Sally to give the kiss of life?
I'd rather you took that on.
2. How does he tell her not to waste time giving it?
Do get on with it.
3. What does Bob say to the people who are crowding round the injured man?
Get back there, please.
4. What does Sally say when she thinks the injured man is recovering consciousness?
I think he's coming round.
5. What does Sally say when the man tries to move?
Don't try to get up.
6. What does Sally mean when she says, I hope it won't come out?
She means she hopes no one will find out she's never given the kiss of life before.
7. How did Bob feel about the injured man's chances?
Bob thought the man didn't look as though he was going to get over the fall.
8. Why did Bob take off his jacket?
Because he felt hot.
9. What did Sally think she would like to do later?
Take up nursing.
10. How had Sally become interested in practical nursing?
She'd come across an article in one of the Sunday papers.
11. What did Bob say about her new idea?
He said it was the fourth bright idea she'd come up with in the last week.
12. What did Bob mean when he said, You never get round to any of them?
He meant she never had time to do anything new.
Exercise 2. Respond to the following sentences using get. For example, She hasn't cleaned the ward yet.
Then it's time she got on with it.
Number 1. I'm always meaning to learn first aid.
Then it's time you got round to it.
Number 2. The doctor hasn't even begun to examine the patient yet.
Then it's time he got on with it.
3. She's been suffering from flu for 6 weeks.
Then it's time she got over it.
4. The crowd aren't giving the ambulance man enough room.
Then it's time they got back.
5. The patient has been lying on his bed all day.
Then it's time he got up.
6. He keeps saying he ought to go to the doctor.
Then it's time he got round to it.
7. I haven't started to feel his pulse yet.
Then it's time you got on with it.
8. The accident happened a month ago, but he's still suffering from shock.
Then it's time he got over it.
Exercise 3. Respond to the following sentences using come. For example, did she tell them she was deaf?
No, it came out after the operation.
Number 1. Did he tell them he had had pneumonia?
No, it came out after the operation.
2. Did she recover consciousness in the ambulance?
No, she came round after the operation.
3. Did they find his wife's telephone number last night?
No, they came across it after the operation.
4. Did you discuss the new treatment in the ward?
No, it came up after the operation.
5. Did they know he was an alcoholic?
No, it came out after the operation.
6. Was she unconscious all day?
No, she came round after the operation.
7. Did you find the medicine by his bed?
No, I came across it after the operation.
8. Was his case history mentioned in the operating theatre?
No, it came up after the operation.
Exercise 4. Respond to the following sentences using take. For example, my shoes are hurting me.
Why don't you take them off?
Number 1. These sandals are giving me blisters.
Why don't you take them off?
2. I've always wanted to know more about occupational therapy.
Why don't you take it up?
3. He says he always hated studying medicine.
Why didn't he take to it?
4. I've been asked to organize the patient's Christmas party.
Why did you take it on?
5. She didn't like the physiotherapy class.
Why didn't she take to it?
6. I can't bear this blanket on my bed.
Why don't you take it off?
7. She's always been interested in nursing.
Why doesn't she take it up?
8. He never used his crutch if he could help it.
Why didn't he take to it?
Oral C. Listening comprehension. Listen to the passage that will be read to you and answer the questions on page 167 in your textbook. You need only choose the letter A, B, C, or D for the answer in each case.
On a cold, raw night in February, Dr. Fergusson sat down to complete his case notes for the day. He had had a busy surgery and hoped there would be no accidents or new babies born in his practice that night. It was quiet in the room, and he continued working contentedly, pleasantly aware of the faint smell of frying bacon and onions through the half-open door. Good, he thought, liver and bacon tonight, and sighed happily, for his housekeeper was an excellent cook. A few minutes later, his senses registered that the smell had changed. It slowly identified itself as a smell that he particularly objected to, the smell of ether. He looked up from his work and, to his astonishment, saw a man sitting in the chair on the other side of his desk. He was a tall, hard-featured man with a sharp nose and rather prominent ears. He was dressed rather oddly in what looked like a crash helmet, which he did not remove, and a long grey cloak which reached to the floor. These peculiarities apart, Dr. Fergusson did not much care for the way the man sat at his ease, smiling at him and showing his teeth. "Good evening, Doctor," said the stranger. "I should be glad of your professional assistance if you can spare the time." Surgery's over, said Dr. Fergusson reluctantly. But of course, if it's anything serious— It's my right foot, replied the stranger. I was obliged to cross your extremely chilly churchyard this evening, and I fell against the stone edge of an old tombstone. My ankle now appears to be twice its size, and is extremely painful. People are always twisting their ankles in that churchyard, said Dr. Fergusson. They ought to cut the grass. Let's have a look at it. The stranger pulled aside his cloak and extended his leg for the doctor to examine. Dr. Fergusson bent forward. He uttered a cry of dismay. Good heavens, he said. This is the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen. You have 10 toes. Naturally, said the stranger. It's usual where I come from. Isn't it so here? Yes, stammered the doctor. But not on one foot.
Oral E. Describing aches and pains. Listen to the following conversation between a husband and wife.
What's the matter, dear?
I've got a headache.
And why are you rubbing your ankle?
I think I've sprained it.
But why are you wearing that bandage on your hand?
I scalded myself with the hot water from the kettle.
Is that why you're sneezing?
Don't be silly, I've got a cold.
Is that why your face is swollen?
No, I've got toothache.
But what are those spots on your neck?
Can't you see? I've got a rash.
And what's that swelling on your arm?
I've been stung by a bee.
Well, why don't you go to the doctor?
How can I? My feet are numb. Besides, I feel dizzy.
You've got a headache, a sprained ankle, a scalded hand, a cold, toothache, a rash, a bee sting, numb feet, and you feel dizzy. Is there any part of your body that's still okay?
Yes, my eyes. I can see you laughing at me.
Exercise 1. Complete the following statements. For example,
Her head is aching because...
She's got a headache.
Number 1.
She's rubbing her ankle because...
She's sprained it.
Number 2.
She's wearing a bandage on her hand because...
She's scalded it.
3.
She's sneezing because...
She's got a cold.
4.
Her face is swollen because...
She's got toothache.
5.
She has spots on her neck because...
She's got a rash.
6.
She has a swelling on her arm because...
She's been stung by a bee.
7.
She can't walk because...
Her feet are numb.
8.
Her head is going round because...
She feels dizzy.
Exercise 2. Reply to the following questions. For example,
Why are you coughing?
I've got bronchitis.
Number 1.
Why are you sneezing?
I've got a cold.
Number 2.
Why are you limping?
I've got a blister.
3.
Why are you scratching?
I've got a rash.
4.
Why are you bandaging your hand?
I've scalded it.
5.
Why are you rubbing your wrist?
I've sprained it.
6.
Why are you holding the side of your face?
I've got toothache.
7.
Why are you taking an aspirin?
I've got a headache.
8.
Why do you sound so hoarse?
I've got a sore throat.
Exercise 3. Complete the following sentences. For example,
When he had bronchitis.
He coughed.
Number 1.
When he had a cold.
He sneezed.
Number 2.
When he had a blistered heel.
He limped.
Number 3.
When he had a sore throat.
He sounded hoarse.
Number 4.
When he had a rash.
He scratched.
Number 5.
When he cut his finger.
He bled.
Number 6.
When he spilt the hot water.
He scalded himself.
Number 7.
When he hit his head.
He rubbed it.